Welcome to the first session of the GCHA's Global Engagement in Climate and Health course. This pilot certificate series course is tailored for members of the Global Climate and Health Alliance and the global health community who are keen on amplifying their organization's voice on climate and health issues, enhancing their participation in global climate and health initiatives, and understanding the processes of the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, and leading advocacy efforts at the global and the local levels for integrating health considerations into policy across sectors.
Para aprender más sobre este curso, podrían visitar la página web de GCHA.
You can visit the GCHA website to learn more. We are going to share that on the chat window.
Traducida en español y para todas las
The
sesiones.
page of the course is translated into Spanish, and we are going to have simultaneous interpretation in all of the sessions. You can find updates, everyone in the X platform with the hashtag GCHA course. For this session, we invite you all
activar la interpretación
to
simultánea.
activate simultaneous interpretation.
Sí, bueno, atenderlo.
Sí, por favor, indique cuál es su idioma de preferencia con el botón de interpretación.
Select your language of preference, the one you feel more comfortable, because we're going to have two Spanish speakers in this meeting, and we are trying to be as inclusive as possible. So in this first meeting, we will delve deeper into the application process for obtaining observer status within the UNFCCC. And we are going to see some presentations of members of the GCHA that just gain the observer status. They will share their motivation, challenges, and tips based on their first-hand experiences. I'm very pleased to welcome you all to this session.
Pero antes de conversar sobre
Before we move on
exploraremos
about the observer status, we're going to explore the importance of the constituencies of the UNFCCC. To this end, I would like to introduce the policy leader of the GCHA, Jess Bigley, to begin with the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Milena, and welcome everybody. So a few words before we hear from our wonderful guest speakers, just on the context of engaging with the UNFCCC. So, of course, the UNFCCC is the primary forum for international climate decision-making, and we know the reason we're all here is because we know that climate decision-making has really heavy implications for human health, whether that's in terms of reducing the health impacts of climate change or making sure that the actions that we use to mitigate and adapt to climate change are also those that maximally protect and promote health along the way. The UNFCCC is certainly not the only forum to improve the integration of health and climate policies. It's so important to also be active at the regional and national and local levels. We know, and this is especially key because there are growing challenges in different multilateral spaces. So it's really wonderful that there is such a richness to the climate and health community around the world in the different ways that we effect change. Of course, it is really key that civil society does participate in UNFCCC processes, not least to counter the narratives of the fossil fuel industry, and also to make sure that the priorities of low and middle income countries, who are often so much less strongly represented in these spaces, can be amplified. It's worthwhile going to a UNFCCC meeting for many reasons, but these include meeting with policymakers, gaining insights into different global contexts, and some of the reasons that it is so difficult to make change, and the bridges that need to be built across countries. There are chances to run side events, and this certainly isn't the be-all and end-all of COP. And then also, of course, to network with like-minded colleagues. It's certainly not straightforward figuring out how to engage with the UNFCCC process. It's certainly a lot less transparent than a previous part of my career, which was focused more heavily on WHO processes. And we get many, many messages of interest every year from members of the GCHA network asking how it's possible to secure observer status and how to make the most of it and how to participate in UNFCCC processes without observer status. So we hope that this can address some of those questions. It's also really key to note that civic space is shrinking. Could we just go back to the previous slide? Sorry, thank you. Civic space is shrinking. There are restrictions in the numbers of badges that are available for civil society. We're seeing restrictions around the number of side events that can be held at the intersessional meetings in Bonn in June, and potentially also reduce space available for press conferences. So it's really key that we do use the space that is available for civil society as well as we possibly can. It is really valuable to go to a COP or to go to the intersessional meetings, the SBs, but it would be really fantastic if anyone ever does go with an intention of doing more than for example, attending other people's side events. It's really, really key that we use it as a chance to understand the negotiations and make the best of that opportunity that we possibly can. Could we have the next slide, please? Thank you, Milena. This is just a summary, and actually now a slightly out-of-date summary. The most up-to-date numbers can be found in the link that's at the bottom of the slide. I'll post that link when I'm done speaking. But just to say that there was really, really strong representation from the health community at COP28, not least because there was the first ever Health Day. As ever, there certainly wasn't equal representation from different regions around the world. Partly because of the number of badges that were available, but then also challenges in funding and in visa access that made it really difficult for people to attend from many of the parts of the world that are most affected by the health impacts of climate change. But all of this to say that there are ways to participate, even if you are not yet a UNFCCC observer. So really encourage you to look at opportunities to attend, whether it's on the delegation of your government. Sometimes there are passes available for organisations that are organising side events. And then finally, there are some limited opportunities on occasion to attend through UNFCCC constituencies, although we wouldn't suggest that that's the primary and most easy avenue to attend through because those opportunities are also limited. Next slide again, please. And if people wouldn't mind muting when they're not speaking, that would be wonderful. Thank you. The slide hasn't quite updated for me, but I'll start presenting what I know is on the next slide. And that's just to talk through the constituency affiliation of different admitted NGOs. Thanks so much, Milena. So we're going to hear from three constituency representatives on this call from CAN, which represents one half of ENGO, which you can see is one of the biggest slices of the pie on that slide. Ringo, Research and Innovation, NGOs, we're going to hear from Tracy, and we're also going to hear from Victoria, who is a member of so really rich perspectives. Hopefully they are also the three constituencies that are most relevant for a lot of GCHA's membership. Also really want to highlight the work of the Women and Gender constituency in particular, but really fantastic work that's done by all of those constituencies. But to go into them in more depth now, I'm going to pass over to Pooja Dave, who is the policy coordinator with Climate Action Network, and is going to talk to us a little bit about how CAN operates. Thank you, Pooja, and over to you.
Thank you, Jess, and hi everyone. As Jess introduced, I am Pooja Dave. I work as policy coordinator with Climate Action Network International. You will not see Climate Action Network International mainly on that pie because we are part of a bigger constituency which is called as ENGO, that is Environmental Organization, along with DCJ, which is the other part of ENGO called as Demand Climate Justice. The difference between both this network widely is that while we focus on the other issues, DCJ has very strong focus on the justice element as well, and that's how it divides. While in principle, both constitutes of environmental, non-profit, non-government organization in general, and that's whole representation. Speaking more on Climate Action Network, we are currently a network of countries. As I previously said, we are mostly environmental organization dealing in the issues of sustainable development, climate change, bringing in justice line, and all other aspects of it. One of the primary criteria, if you want to be part of CAN network, more largely ENGO, is that you need to be non-for-profit and non-governmental, and should not be any business-related organization. And I think each constituency will detail its own criteria as well, because I know Tracy is on this call, who is my counterpart with the constituency and has much more experience with the constituency knowledge than that what I have, because I've recently taken up that task as well. Speaking more on what CAN is and what CAN does, as I previously said, and adding on how we function. So if you really want to join CAN, we have different levels at which you can be part of our network as well. Just speaking to the scope of that CAN is and the wide range of environmental organizations that it covers, we have different level. So we have an international level where all the organizations that have international scope are part of CAN International. And then we have regional and national nodes widely. So if your organization is based in any of the regional or national location, you can ideally be part of that node rather than CAN International, because to join CAN I, you also need to have a very strong international scope and focus. All these, I'll not go into detail just to respect for time. All these details are on our website, but ideally the difference between what a regional and national node is, for example, we have a regional node called as CANSA or CAN Southeast Asia. CANSA is CAN South Asia, which encompasses all the countries that are ideally part of that geographical region. While in certain cases, like for Canada, we don't have a regional node, but we have CAN Canada. So that's the national nodes. That's how the scope of different nodes vary. And that's how its function also vary, that while we have an overarching objective and deliverables that we want to achieve, many national regional nodes also prioritize the importance and issues that are priority for their region and topic. So that's on outside how we govern throughout our membership and nodes. For our political steering and other movement building and action steering, we have different internal structures as well, because we have such huge membership that we need internal processes to bring everything together. So one of the political steering body that we have that takes political decision is called as PCG, or Policy Political Coordination Group. So that is the primary body that steers all the political conversation discussion that happens throughout the network. It is a closed group. We send out a call for nomination, and then we select who are part of that group, because that's a very top level steering body. The counterpart of that body, which has been recently established because we are into the space of movement building as well, is the Action Coordination Group that takes decision on all the actions and what sort of action, what messaging should be around any political movement that we established. If you have been around in this space last year, you would have seen that we did a whole drumbeat around the fossil fuel phase out. So all that planning of outside inside actions are developed as part of the Action Coordination Group. Again, because CAN is member driven, all these political steering or action steering bodies have people who are from the membership itself. And there are hardly any exceptions where non-members are part of it. Once we have this top steering body, then we have very dedicated working groups. These working groups are very thematic focused. We have all the themes that are widely included within UNFCCC and have top priorities, including from adaptation, loss and damage, energy, to FlexMax that deals with Article 6, and the most recently 2 working group that we added, identifying that they should be our priority. And last year, and Jess is over here who can also speak to that, that we added health as one of the core working group to our structure. And the other working group that we streamlined was work around just transition as well. This working group is that we have identified 2 to 3 work coordinators from our membership. Generally one from Global North. Well, we regularly meet and we do all these political discussion, developing policy position, any briefings, any expectation documents, which then goes through entire network for consultation as well. So that's how, like, it's all the bread and butter work of what we do happens within the working group with steering of PCG and ACG. In terms of wider coordination as well, once we develop any position, it goes through our network for something that we call as bylining, or in layman term, it is something that we ask for no objections, or even if you have objection, you particularly byline a particular paragraph for a particular position that you don't align with. But usually as we work with consensus of everyone and all our membership, we hardly get any bylining requests unless and until an organization strongly objects something. So that's in terms of overall and how we represent ourselves within UNFCCC as well. Jess, I'll hand it over to you to speak more about the whole health connection and how it became part of the whole CAN conversation as well from last year. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Pooja. We'll have a brief Q&A once the representatives from the other UNFCCC constituencies have spoken. I know your time is really, really stretched, so I can attempt to wear a CAN hat for that. Would welcome your thoughts if you happen to be able to stay. And we will need to speed on through because I think Tracy might only be able to stay till the half hour. So Victoria, if you wouldn't mind if Tracy went before you, that would be wonderful, but send a note in the chat if it doesn't work. Really, really briefly on how health is featured within CAN. We are really fortunate as GCHA to co-chair the CAN Health Working Group along with Healthcare Without Harm, represented by Shweta Narayan. We pulled together in the first few months of the working group's existence an initial briefing paper on how health relates to other areas of CAN's work and to make sure that health is integrated into the wider narratives that are used within CAN. We are working on a few products this year as the CAN Health Working Group, including on health counter-arguments to what we refer to as dangerous distractions or false solutions. So interventions like carbon capture and storage or reliance on coal co-firing with ammonia, which are not proven to work at the scale that they need to work at to be effective in reducing emissions, but also present additional health risks along the way. I will leave it there and see if, Victoria, if it is okay with you, if we move to Tracy's presentation first. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess.
Tracy is Tracy Buck is one of the co-coordinators of Ringo, and she will tell you much more about that. Thanks so much, Tracy.
Yeah, thank you, Jess. Can you hear me okay? Excellent. And Victoria, thank you very much for letting me slide in. I do have some extra time though, and I will try to stay on as long as possible for Q&A. Good. Well, first of all, Jess, I love your articulation of our title, Ringo, as innovation, but in fact, we're research and independent non-governmental NGOs, although I like to think we're a little innovative. One way that we could stretch that and say, at least that we're different, is that fundamentally, even though, as you can see from the pie chart that was shown earlier, Ringo is the second largest constituency, largely formed by researchers and teachers and scholars and, you know, independent think tanks as well as universities. But the independent piece brings in folks from various religious faiths. We often have governmental parliamentarians, those who are subnational political actors who, for example, don't identify with the local governments and municipal authorities constituency, one of the other 9 constituencies. But here's the big takeaway. You can see I'm going to talk about the structure and a little bit on what we do on health and then how to join and be valuable. But if you go to the next slide, I'll hit my big takeaway, which is of these 9 constituencies, Ringo is the only one that is a non-advocacy constituency. So what does that mean? I'm so happy, Pooja, that you began, because ENGOs, is the paradigm and one of the founding constituencies when the UNFCCC was created, in that it, as she articulated through the organizational structure, is there to help frame negotiation information and ideas, present policy options, do that both at the individual level with country delegations, but in mounting public interest and support as well. In contrast, Ringo was created after ENGOs, for example, a few years later, and its purpose was, one, to focus on evidence-based policymaking, and so really to be focusing on bringing information to the negotiations, and second, to make sure that there was a fair process, that there was really engagement and inclusion. In particular, we have focused on non-governmental stakeholders. So that's one. And like ENGOs, and I'm sure we're going to hear from Youngo, that we're led in a certain structure. So there's an overall directing body, a leader body. For us, it's the Ringo Steering Committee. The picture on the right is actually dated from Katowice, but it was one of the few times at that time we were all together, so that was fun. We've had some coming and goings. We're now up to a strong body of 12 with a nice cohort of 4 recent new members who are younger and more geographically. So it's that group of volunteers who lead Ringo's overall. And I should be really clear, Ringo, as compared to CAN, for example, is not a membership organization. It's a constituency. Thanks for muting. And it's a constituency of admitted delegations who affiliate, meaning they're focusing on policymaking. Should I hold up for a second? Yeah.
Just
okay.
I've just muted them.
Lovely. Thanks, Jess. And so we don't have a separate membership. We don't have a separate membership process. We're all volunteer run. Our co-constituency focal points, or CFPs, are also volunteers. And the way you become a member of Ringo is, first, I think, Jess, as you're going to talk about more today, you go through what can be the year-long process of gaining admission to the UNFCCC. It means you're accredited, and you have to go through a paper-based process with the UNFCCC, usually up to a year in advance. Once you are an admitted delegation, then you are given the choice, this is all done by the Secretariat of the UNFCCC, of which of the 9 constituencies you feel like you're a kindred spirit with. Who would you affiliate with logically? And sometimes you can do it up to 1 or 2 or even 3. Again, if you choose to affiliate with Ringo, right away, you are acknowledging that as a constituency, we will not take specific positions and advocate for them on the negotiation agenda. We follow it closely, a lot of discussion, a lot of preparation. As Jess was pointing out earlier, there's other things outside of negotiations that go on, but our group tends to focus more on the negotiations themselves. So no separate admission process or application process to be in Ringo, but you must be an admitted delegation and you must commit to Ringo's charter, which you can find on our website. And then finally, we, like all the other constituencies, run daily coordination meetings, usually 9 to 10 at COPs and SBs. And there we do focus on the negotiations and in particular, what's going on substantively at them. And we bring a lot of experts in to go deeper than to understand what we're seeing, essentially to try to make meaning of them, which usually there's not one, right? So it's a good, healthy focus that is both deep and faceted. Next slide, please. I'm not seeing it yet. There we go. So I want to point out that like ENGO, or at least like CAN, the way Pooja described it, we too have obviously the broader leadership group. Ours is the steering committee. We have the folks who manage us and are our main liaisons with various actors in the leadership of the Secretariat and of the various country-led bodies. And then what we've created, likewise, a committee structure. Again, I think you'll see this with ENGO in their presentation. We call them thematic groups. And in the last year, we created one that was focused on public health. You can see on the right side, which is language that's taken out of our website. And I think, yeah, I have a website link here, but you're also welcome to just Google Ringos and UNFCCC or Ringo and UNFCCC, and you'll get there quickly. And if you go to our thematic page, you'll see there's a number of them. And the purpose here is not, again, to take positions to bring to the negotiations, but it is to build capacity for the individual delegations, members of Ringo, so admitted delegations who choose to affiliate with Ringo. It provides a community around specific substantive issues. We have one on cryosphere. We have one on finance. We have one on agriculture. I could go on, but you get the idea. So that is the specific part of Ringo. I think that would be interesting to members here. We also have I want to just get to the value proposition of constituencies. I mean, fundamentally, I think Jess started us off well, that what constituencies do is they help the Secretariat of the UNFCCC, so that administrative body, interact with the, it was some almost 14,000 observers who were at the last meeting. And so what they're doing is it's a way of getting information to individual delegations who are admitted to the UNFCCC, who frequently have various members who attend COPs or SBs. And likewise, the constituencies give information to them. So there's a lot of essentially liaising. But the third, fourth point I want to make here, the bulleted, which is I think is really critical when deciding how you affiliate with a constituency. Pooja mentioned that some of the bodies are closed, some are open within ENGO and CAN in particular as a membership organization. This is where Ringo can be useful to folks. Not only do we allow our listserv to be pretty open, and we have a website that's used quite a bit because it helps people prepare for COPs substantively and procedurally, like how things work and run. We do webinars. The other thing we do throughout the year, which I think is critical in building one's capacity to really engage in the negotiations, is these limited access meetings. The most typical ones are constituted body meetings, like the Adaptation Committee, the Standing Committee on Finance, and there's many others. They've been a fair number have been created in the last 5 to 10 years. And they meet throughout the year. And essentially for the negotiations for the COP as a legislative body, when it meets at the end of the year each year and takes decisions, these constituted bodies are like subcommittees. And they're the ones who are engaged in the more specific nitty-gritty of the negotiations around issues that have been tabled by various parties. Remember, it's parties. Yeah. It's parties who create the agenda, not us, right? Not the NGO community. So I wanted to make the pitch that it's really important when you are looking at how you want to affiliate with a constituency to find out how much access you will get to these meetings, because they are all run through the constituencies. The Secretariat sends out the call. They're usually limited in how many people each constituency can nominate to attend. And then each constituency handles it very differently. Ringo, we run an open nomination process over our listserv. Others do not do that. So it's something to keep in mind, because especially as health gets further on the negotiation agenda, because we all know it's not deeply on the negotiation or expressly on it, but as its implications are either indirectly on the negotiation or it gets on the negotiation, like agriculture did over a 12 to 15 year period of getting up there from the subsidiary bodies to the COP level, that participation in these constituted body meetings and some other limited access meetings will be useful, and your affiliation is key to that. I'll stop here, but I will just tell you that I'm happy to answer questions. I do think that daily coordination meetings, that we are privileged to focus on discussion, right? We don't have to get together to then agree on a negotiating position to take out of those meetings. We really focus on analysis of the negotiations. And that prepares then our individual members of Ringo, those delegations and their representatives, to then take positions if they want to. So I want to be really clear. Again, Ringo doesn't take positions as a group, as a constituency, but certainly our individual members do. Right. Thanks for your time, and I'll hang out. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you ever so much, Tracy. So wonderful to learn a little bit more about Ringo, having seen a lot of it from the outside and heard such rave reviews from people that do go to your daily meetings, and certainly innovative, but also independent. We're going to hear now from Victoria Bull, who is a member of UNGO, and also in the rest of her life is working with the Rosby Youth Climate Initiative based out of Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jess, and everyone. Hello, nice to meet you. My name is Victoria Bull, and I am a member of the Youngo Health Working Group. The key thing to know about Youngo is it's the official youth constituency of the UNFCCC. A common misconception that people have actually is that it's a youth organization, but it is much, much bigger than that. And something that people often do not realize is that you can join Youngo as an individual if you're under the age of 35, since the sort of official United Nations definition of the youth age bracket is 18 to 35, with those under 18, of course, being more in the children age bracket. So you don't need to represent a climate or youth organization to join the constituency, but of course for organizations, especially those involved in international climate and environmental policy processes and who are official observers under the UNFCCC, membership is hugely beneficial. And in addition, registering with Youngo only takes about 5 minutes through their registration form. Youngo is a network of young people representing the voice of global youth in UNFCCC processes that aims to raise awareness of the climate crisis among young people, as well as connect young people and organizations to build a global coalition advocating and implementing climate solutions. After joining, you're added to the Youngo mailing list, which is a great place to find youth opportunities, but also to engage young people if, for example, this is your target audience for any projects or programs in climate and health, and also to find both your future team members or participants of any events, especially around SBs and COPs. So on the next slide, you can see that Youngo is guided by the leadership of 2 annually elected global focal points. Generally speaking, the organizational structure of Youngo is horizontal, but there's also kind of this more guiding leadership structure. So there is one global north focal point and one focal point for the global south, and the activities of Youngo are organized by the GCT, or the Global Coordination Team. And there are also countless working groups, and there are so many that they would probably not fit on one slide, but there are both operational ones. So, for example, there's working on Youngo communications, policy, and action, but also there are numerous thematic working groups, just like in Ringo and in other constituencies, that work on specific areas of climate policy, from sort of those focused on food agriculture, to cities, to health, to ocean policies, and so on. And on the next slide, you can see a QR code on the screen, which is for the link that you can follow to register with Youngo, but the link that you can also copy and input into your browser later is also available on the next slide. And on this slide, you can see that once you receive the information about Youngo and all of the different working groups that you join after you've your registration is approved, you'll be a member of you will be part of over 12,000 people from around the globe championing the voice of youth for climate action. And on the next slide, you will see that Youngo has a dedicated Youngo Health Working Group, as I've already mentioned, that I am a part of. This working group is a huge community from diverse health backgrounds. Some of their work has included preparing policy papers and statements around the different UN conferences, but also preparing and participating for high-level meetings, so with national delegations, as well as different organizations through organizational delegates. And this working group has also organized countless different side events, which have incled those at SDGs and COPs, but also there is the chance to...
Please could people mute if they are not speaking?
Not too bad. So yeah, there's also the chance to be the voice for planetary health in regional and national youth climate advocacy with the support of Youngo, because there are youth conferences like the LCOIs and the ARCOIs, so the local and the regional conferences of youth on climate change organized by Youngo members each year around the world. And the main sort of output of these conferences is the local and regional youth statements, that then feed into the global youth statement, which becomes sort of the blueprint for our constituency and its advocacy throughout the year. So for me, I would say the value of joining Youngo, and especially the health working group, but not only, is the fact that there are so many different opportunities for intersectional collaboration. So you can work across different working groups. For example, for myself, I'm interested in the food and agricultural negotiations, but also the climate, peace and security aspects. So I'm part of both of the working groups that are focused on this besides health. There are also many capacity building opportunities, sessions, workshops, and opportunities for voluntary work, especially around the summer and autumn, around the Bonn Climate Conference and at around COP. And there is generally a lot of support from more experienced Youngo members. So thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well.
Thank you, Victoria, and thank you, everybody. We'll move now to Q&A. So please do raise your hand if you'd like to speak, and our wonderful expert panel can answer you on hopefully any questions that you've got on different UNFCCC constituencies. They were wonderfully comprehensive presentations, so it's possible that no one has any questions already. Or if anyone would prefer to type their question in the chat instead of asking it out loud, feel free. All right, then. It seems that you were wonderfully comprehensive. And just one more really big thank you to Pooja, to Tracy and Victoria. Speaking as someone that's been part of Canon, that has followed everything that's happened, at least from the outside, for Ringo and Youngo, it's so exciting to see how health is becoming more deeply integrated. But just to commend once again, in case it wasn't already really obvious, how fantastically knowledgeable and effective these different constituencies are. Wholeheartedly recommend, if you do go to a UNFCCC meeting, to going to some of those daily meetings, and also to signing up and making sure that you stay up to date on UNFCCC issues throughout the year as well. With that, I will pass over to Milena to steer us through the second half of this webinar on how to secure observer status. Milena, over to you.
Muchas gracias, Jess. Mi nombre es Milena Sergeyeva.
Thank you, Jess. My name is Milena Sergeyeva. So I'm the liaison officer of the CHA for Latin America and the Caribbean. I'm based in Santiago, in Chile, and I will present the observer status along with our member organizations. To speak about observers, we have to know that the observers are one of the three main categories of participants in the meetings and conferences of the UNFCCC. We have representatives of the parties of the convention and the different countries that have the status of observer present in the different meetings. We have journalists, communication media present, and representatives of the observer community. Within this observer status, we have three types. Observers can be the system of the United Nations and their specialized entities, also intergovernment organizations, and the biggest group, NGOs, like the GSHA and all of its members. Until COP28 last year, 3,804 organizations in total accumulated were admitted as observers. Most of them are from the West and North America, and some are of developing nations. As an organization that has the status of observer, you can send a delegation to the meetings of the UNFCCC and have access to the Blue Zone where the negotiations are led. You can make submissions to the UNFCCC portal. Here I'm going to open some quote. You as observers can make your own submissions, but you also need to receive an email from GCHA with an invitation to collaborate on joint submissions. And actually, sometimes it's possible to send submissions from non-observers, but this is quite rare. Having observer status at the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change allows health civil society organizations to influence in international climate policies directly. They can participate in discussions, formal and informal ones, provide expert opinions, use the health argument in general to stimulate climate action, and maximize the health opportunities there are when health-centric approaches are applied to climate change mitigation and adaptation. Of course, there are networking opportunities. Your organization can gain knowledge and visibility and credibility as well within the space of civil society. There are things that cannot be done. Not all the meetings are open to observers, and some actually are only open to the parties of the convention. So with this, I want to share with you a brief presentation sent by Maria Marta. Maria Marta, she is the administrative manager of the WPHA. to get to know the main steps to obtain the observer status and how they achieve this.
Hello, my name is Maria Mata, and I'm the Administrative Manager of the World Federation of Public Health Associations, WFPHA. I would like to thank the Global Climate and Health Alliance for inviting me to this webinar about the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change Observer Status. Let me introduce you briefly WFPHA. It is an international NGO that represents 5 million public health professionals worldwide. WFPHA is recognized as an NGO in official relations with the World Health Organization. It's also accredited by the United Nations Environment Programme, and it has consultative status with the United Nations Economic and Social Council. I'd like to explain why, as an organization, we decided to apply for the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change Observer Status. We believe that applying for observer status in the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change is quite significant. Civil society's role in finding solutions to the impact of climate change is critical, and the non-party stakeholders, also called observers, play an important role in achieving global climate change goals. Civil society's role includes proposing and implementing more ambitious national climate plans, raising public awareness, analyzing their impact, accelerating climate finance, and developing and transferring technology. I would like to explain the main step of the application process. There are 4 main steps. Step number 1 is the application. All required documents are submitted through the online admission system. Step number 2, assessment by the UNFCCC Secretariat. The Secretariat assesses the application documents. The Secretariat will contact the organization for additional information, as well as to notify them on the outcome of the assessment through the online admission system. The step number 3 is provisional admittance by the COP Bureau. Eligible organizations are recommended by the Secretariat to the Bureau of COP, CMP, and CMA for provisional admittance to allow registrations for the upcoming COP, with the understanding that the formal submission observer rests with the COP itself. Provisional admittance allows applicant organizations to register delegates for COP within established timelines and start preparation for travel. Access to the conference venue is limited to duly registered delegates. If the applicant organization will not be admitted as observer by the COP, the registration of the organization's delegation will have to be revoked, and delegates will not be able to enter the COP venue. Notice on provisional admittance will be communicated through the online admission system. And the step number 4, admission by the COP. The document containing the list of eligible organizations is considered by the COP under organizational matters. For our organization, WFPHA, it was a straightforward process. However, obtaining the observer status can take some time. We applied for observer status in August 2022, received notification a few months later that our application has been recommended by the COP Bureau, and were granted final approval and admission by the COP in August 2023. It means 12 months later. Just keep this in mind if your organization would like to apply for observer status. I'd also like to highlight that while admitted organizations are not required to repeat the admission process, they must register the representative for each UNFCCC session or meeting they wish to attend. I hope this was helpful to you, and thank you so much for having me today.
Muchísimas gracias, María Mata, por este video tan informativo.
Thank you, Maria Mata, for such a good video. Now I'm going to go with Laura Rate of the Fundación Plenitud in the Dominican Republic, member of the GCHA in Latin America and the Caribbean, to tell us more about what kind of documents, as someone asks in the chat, with more detail about the application process. Go ahead, Laura. Good afternoon. I'm Laura Jate from the Fundación Plenitud. We are an organization from the civil society, members of the GCHA, as Milena just said, and we are based in the Caribbean. So we are an island that faces high vulnerability and risk facing climate change. The process for us, we upload all of the documents in 2016. You can go to the next slide, please. In 2016, we uploaded all the required documents to the online admission system, and a year later, a bit more over than a year, we were admitted. That process is a process that started quite complicated, but then it gets easier. As you can see, from COP1 to COP27, there are 3,000 and something accepted registrations, and 3,000 are NGOs, but the first 14 years were the most difficult to get those accreditations, 1,000 accreditations. And for the Latin America and the Caribbean, only 8.2% are from Latin America and the Caribbean. The process to be accredited, as was presented, has 4 main steps. Next one. But it's worthwhile doing this. So we have the Secretariat receiving applications. So that's why it's good to do this early. As you know, it takes about a year and a half. So it's good to do this as early as possible. Next one. This is a one-time process. The first time, you have to gather lots of documents. However, once you have been admitted, then it gets easier. You would only have to participate within the working groups or constituencies. You upload the documents into a platform that is called online registration system. Now, there are eligibility criteria. For example, some of those criteria are for the regional or national offices or affiliates of an international organization, in principle, are not eligible because it is advised to place themselves under the umbrella of their international grassroots organization. If that international organization has not been admitted, then the regional one could be admitted as observer. The organizations have to prove they have independent legal personality. So, for example, universities can only apply as full entity, not a faculty nor a department. And the networks and initiatives, for example, like the GCHA, can request it if independent legal personality exists. And they must have completed at least one full accounting year. Once they have been founded, at least they have to wait a year because they have to send all of the accounting documents. For-profit companies are not eligible for admission.
Ahora, ¿cuáles son
Now,
documentos requeridos? Primero,
the required documents. First, a request letter from the head of the organization saying that, stating they want to belong and be part. It can be the rector of the university, and it also must contain a paragraph confirming that this organization will comply with the guidelines of the UNFCCC and also with anti-discrimination policies that must also be included. Then you have to provide copies of certified articles of association, regulations, bylaws, and the scope and governance structure of the organization. Then the document must include information on the treatment of assets in the event of dissolution of the organization. If the statutory objectives of these documents do not refer to matters covered by the UNFCCC, then they have to submit another official document like strategic plans, decisions, or resolutions approved by the governing body. Next one. Some other documents, well, the certificate of incorporation or registration, financial settlement, list of the names of everyone involved and everyone providing funding of the past 12 months, recent documents and all kind of evidence to prove that the organization can be related with the convention. Also a list of networks that the organization is part of. In the case of research institutes, for example, like universities, they must submit evidence of academic independence. Next one. So all applications for admission must be sent through that online admission system. So it would be good to store all the documents in one file, and once you have them all ready, you can upload them. Usually these documents, most of the organizations that have been legally constituted have them. So it sounds a little bit difficult, but all of the organizations probably have these documents available. So before you upload them, it's good to read the manual of the OAS. And if you have a problem when uploading a document, then there is a service desk that can help you with that. And the applications are uploaded once. It must be in full. You cannot upload a piece of it and then the rest. It has to be all together. Also, they must be submitted in the original language of the UN. And some documents must be submitted in the original language of the UN. Why it's important and worth the effort? Because we can play an important role in the formation and implementation of global and local climate change policies. And also, it's important because we can support governments with our experience and information, and also to the communities. It strengthens democracy because we help overcome the lack of democratic legitimacy in the global environmental sphere. We can influence in international conferences, monitor the implementation of agreements, and raise public awareness. Next one. So it's an opportunity for us to raise awareness on the topics we are interested in, like sustainable production and consumption.
¿Ustedes escuchan a Laura? Jess?
Look like we lost her. Can you hear, Jess?
I can hear you, but I have also lost Laura.
Quizás perdió la...
In any case, the slides are very comprehensive. So we will share the full presentation after the call so that you can follow the remaining points. But Milena, I wonder if you want to turn to Q&A in case Laura cannot join us quickly, or if we should wait.
No, lamentablemente Laura se desconectó, así que
Unfortunately, we lost Laura, so we are open to your question. We saw some questions on the chat box, and we know we have Karen Eagles with us of Malaria No More, who recently got their observer status and who can share some of their experience with the process.
So if people would like to pose their questions, Carrie is one of the people that can help to answer them, especially if we no longer have Laura. If other people that have also got recent experience in the application would like to stay on and also show their experiences in response to any questions, that would be wonderful. But really do encourage anyone with questions to go forward and ask them. It's certainly not a light process, so hopefully we can all share our experiences and expertise to make it easier.
Teófilos, ¿querías ver la información de contacto o el...
Theophilos, so here you have the contact information. That's what you wanted to see, or this one, the previous one?
Yes, I got it. I got it. Thank you very much.
Great. Claro, hay una pregunta en el chat que yo puedo responder.
There's a
de Claire.
question in the chat box that I can answer.
Escuchamos de CAN, por ejemplo.
We listen to CAN, for example. They have different regional nodes. And also, there are the regional climate weeks held by the framework convention that gathers different stakeholders focusing in regional work.
Respecto a... Sí, Jess, por favor, sigue.
Please finish first.
Sí, quería preguntar si alguien tiene experiencia sobre...
Anybody has experience on local organizations
cubrir los requerimientos
who cannot cover the requirements?
I wanted to share one more piece of information in addition to Milena's, and that is that normally there are regional climate weeks, or there have been for the past 2 years at least, I think, maybe 3. But unfortunately, because of resource constraints, the UNFCCC did have to cancel the regional climate weeks. This year, it's not clear if they will begin again next year, but hopefully that will be the case.
Sí, importante agregar que este año
It's important to mention that this week, the climate weekly meetings were canceled, unfortunately, because that was a platform to listen local problems that are specific to different regions. And that way you can raise the voice of the developing countries who are not represented so well by their civil society at COP. So if we have no further questions, maybe Carrie would like to add something? Any other tip, any piece of information that would be useful?
Sure. I don't know if it's useful, but we did go through this process. We applied in 2022 and received our final approval at the last COP. The documents, while there's quite a few of them, they should mostly exist. There was very little that we actually had to create for our application, but it's just a lot of waiting and no real outlet to ask questions. So if you just don't hear for months and months and months at a time, that doesn't mean anything. It just takes a long time.
Buenísimo. Gracias por...
Thank you very much for sharing, Carrie. And I hope you don't lose your faith just because of the amount of documents. So please follow the course. If you haven't registered, you can do it now so we can help you all in the process to navigate the space of the UNFCCC. I appreciate and to all of our attendees and our presenters, thank you very much and see you all in the next episode. Thank you very much.